Okay. Do you want me to kind of run it a little bit as well?
If you would like to.
Sure. So today is Wednesday, July 31st, and we are at the weekly Jupyter front-end and accessibility weekly call. And we have a few items on the agenda, so let's get started. Jason?
Hey, good morning, everyone. So we were going through issues at the triage meeting yesterday morning. We do triage for a bunch of Jupyter projects every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And there was an interesting issue that came in, 16626, which I will drop into the chat. And it was a notebook 6 versus 7 parity issue, which therefore also affects JupyterLab 4, which is about set next input payload, which is that when you modify the input of a cell, the output doesn't get cleared. And it sounded like the person requesting it was expecting that if they changed the input to a cell that had been run, that the output gets cleared. And it seems like this is a behavior change from 6 to 7. And I'm curious what people think about it, because I have thoughts about it, but I want to get thoughts from the community as well.
Yeah, I would say that I don't necessarily expect the output of a cell to be cleared unless you rerun the cell.
Hmm. That was what I was expecting as well. And my bias is that I work at a company where JupyterLab is often used for things like AI applications, which can have very, very long running cells, like minutes or even hours to run a very long calculation. Um, and so if I ran a cell that took an hour to run, and then I hit the space bar or a letter on the input and all of the output got immediately culled, I would not be happy in that
I think
moment.
this would be just the general concept being we don't want to lose people's work.
Yeah.
I think that it might be useful to indicate that the cell has been modified. I mean,
Well,
that
that's what
could be
we do with
something.
the dirty dot. You can see in that issue that when you change the input of a cell,
Yeah,
we change the accent color in the default theme to orange, and we put the dot to the left of the prompt to
yeah.
indicate that the input and the output are not necessarily related anymore.
To me, that would be sufficient.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that the notebook 6 behavior was to eagerly clear the output in that case. I wasn't as familiar with that.
So briefly looking at the Jupyter client documentation, which is where the messaging specification is for Jupyter, there doesn't seem to be any description of this behavior. So set next input can replace the current cell instead of inserting a new one, but there is nothing about clearing outputs. So I think that this is an undefined behavior which we are free to change. And more broadly, all of that is deprecated anyways. So the payload section where this is defined has like bold letters deprecated in two places. So on one hand, we can narrow down the specification to say that the default is not to clear the outputs as per existing JupyterLab and Jupyter Notebook 7 behavior. But I am also not quite sure if we should, if it is deprecated. But on the other hand, like half of the internet relies on this behavior, so I don't imagine that payloads would be removed anytime soon.
I like the idea of clarifying it to say, this is the expectation. It seems like there's some ambiguity here.
And we can also acknowledge that in previous versions of Notebook, it was a different behavior, and
Yeah.
that's what actually is the case for some of the other changes that happen. So I think it's fine.
I'm going to add a comment to this, to talk about this.
Something that seems like it should be a sort of a side effect that's up to the implementer of the application.
Okay. I'm summarizing this as the behavior of set next input with respect to output is not defined, but it seems like the consensus in the community is that changing the input of a cell should not affect the output until the yeah, I just called it the weekly meeting to rerun the cell. If a cell output took a lot of time to generate, to clear the output unless the user explicitly dot indicator and color change. Okay. So
Sorry if I missed this, but it sounded, it seems, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it seems like he's not necessarily asking for like the default behavior to change, but to have the ability to change the behavior of the app, like having this clear output value.
you know, I hear you, and I also don't know whether there's consensus in the community that we want to do this. Like, this is part of the purpose of triage is we get a lot of issues that come in, and not all of them represent work that we're actually going to do, which makes me wonder whether I should even leave this open or just say, thank you for your suggestion, but we've decided we don't want to do this.
We could tell them, you know, you can make an extension for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wouldn't close it, and I wouldn't tell them that we decided we are
Yep.
not going to do that. I would say that it is like up to community to send a pull request, and I would just highlight that the payloads in general are deprecated, but I also don't want to go too much into this. I think it's fair to acknowledge that they are widely used, and maybe at some time in the future there will be a decision to undeprecate them or rework the specification so that it is more suited, and whatever reason was for the deprecation is no longer valid.
So, sorry, payloads being deprecated. So all of the payloads then, like as he described it in the test code?
So again, I've linked the messaging docs for Jupyter Client,
Yeah.
and all the payloads are
Oh,
deprecated.
yeah. In all
They've been
caps, it says
deprecated
deprecated.
twice deprecated,
Yeah.
deprecated for many years now.
Yeah.
I guess at least 5 years. But
I
because they
will
are
emphasize
so
this.
widely used, I even imagine that it would be possible that they could be undeprecated. And part of that is because actually the YDoc and shared model might enable some of these things to be done on the server side. Now, I just feel that this is an important capability of notebooks. But we are not ready to discuss that, and I guess that would be for a different call and more general, the Jupyter Steering, Software Steering Council, whatever it's called.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that, because this is a large document and I missed the big text about payloads being all caps deprecated. So I'll mention that in the response. Okay. Well, I think what we did yesterday in triage is we accepted this issue, and then we also tagged it as needs discussion. So I'm not going to close it. I'm going to summarize our conversation briefly and invite, additional comments. I'm not just going to close it. So Alexei, who opened it, unfortunately, he could not make this meeting. I invited him to it, but he said he couldn't make it. I'm not sure where he's based geographically, but I will follow up on this, and if he responds, and if other people would like to respond, please do. Thank you.
So moving on to the next thing on the agenda, I just wrote a note there just for visibility that I don't know if we finished. I didn't attend the last meeting, so I don't know like what the status of the 4.3 milestone is. But I just am saying that I've been trying to close out some of the move some of the issues that are tagged accessibility to other milestones, and I still have more to go. I guess the question for the room is, how much time do I have left? I think I don't have any time. And I see Mike's point. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the plan is to start releasing betas very quickly. So technically, it is scheduled for about 5th of August, which is next week on Monday. So if you would like to get some additional accessibility pull requests merged, those should be ready for review soon. And I think let's discuss the other pull requests which are targeting 4.3 on this call if we have time at the end.
That sounds good. Which, I mean, I think we might be at the end now. Do we want to record going through the PRs, or do we do that after?
I think after.
Okay. I'll let the room hang for a couple of seconds in case anybody has anything else to add to the recorded portion.
I do see a question coming into the agenda from Rocio, but did you want to talk about it on the record?
Sure, I can ask if that's okay with you all. I just have a quick question. I headed myself a little late, but I was looking at an issue that was lined up in the queue for 4.3, and it's I'm trying to, I believe it is this one. I'm going to share it here. I think Mike replied to my comment. Thank you, Mike, for I was just wondering, based on some upcoming changes for the new version of Xterm that will no longer include the Canvas add-on, if that was something that, if this was an issue that was still kind of in the queue. And Mike, you mentioned that there's still the DOM and WebGL renderers. And I guess I was just wondering if, from what I took a look at, like sort of the terminal and the terminal extension a bit, and it seemed to me like I might be wrong, but it seemed to me like we were choosing between either using the Canvas add-on or the WebGL add-on, and assuming that one of those will be available. So I was wondering if that code would need to be modified to kind of handle the case where only maybe in the future DOM or WebGL will be available rather than Canvas, and make those kind of like, I think the default might be the DOM render in Xterm, from what the research that I did a bit. So yeah, I guess I was just wondering if my assumption is correct, and if there would be like a few more modifications that I should potentially make to have this like front end be selected based on a setting.
So while there will be still different renderers available for Xterm.js,
Mhm.
I'm not sure whether we still want to have this setting if the direction of the maintainers is to remove the alternative frontends, the alternative renderers. But maybe we want to have this setting, but want the situation to stabilize a little bit. No, it is also equally fine to add the setting now and remove it later in a major release, because we are not upgrading to major versions that
Right.
often.
Okay. I see, yeah, because yeah, I don't think the major version of Xtreme has been released, so yeah, yet. So that might be. I'm not really sure what their plan for that is, but I think I might take a look at this one and see if I can help out with this one, because yeah, just caught my attention. But
I would just suggest you not spend too much of your time on this, because it might be a deep rabbit hole of trying to enable changing the renderers. And I think, like for accessibility, for example, there might be different settings which we might expose, which are not going to change in the next major version. And maybe that is a quicker win. Or if there are issues which you are also experiencing, or users experience, maybe we should be just doing better job of reporting them to Xterm.js. I mean, in past we did, and those issues were often quickly resolved. So, yeah.
okay, thank you for that. And that was all for me.
I'm checking the agenda again. Oh, yeah, so it looks like Jeremy added some stuff. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I just a quick announcement that we finally released JupyterLite 0.4. It's the version based on JupyterLab 4.2 and Notebook 7.2. So it was a bit overdue, but finally got it out. And yeah, the main highlights are that it's now using those two. It's based on this latest Notebook and Lab stable releases. And another change, which delayed a little bit the release, was the, now that it supports accessing the files from the kernel using a different approach than the service worker. And it's using this browser feature called the shared array buffers. And with this, it's supposed to make accessing files a little bit more stable. So we're hoping that this fixes a couple of issues people have been seeing, especially with cache in their browser. And when they upgrade to a new version, they always have issues that things are not working anymore. So if you have time testing it, that would be great. One of the main downsides of using these shared array buffers is that it's not very easy to set up on GitHub pages because you need to add some specific HTTP headers. And for now, GitHub Pages doesn't allow you to do it very easily. You have to go get around it using another service worker, which is a little bit funny. But on other hosts, they can be enabled. So that's the main change, I would say, in JupyterLite 0.4. I think we still have a backlog for the next version. The main update would be aligning on JupyterLab 4.3, Notebook 7.3, but then see if can also land a couple of other changes. And yeah, as always, if someone wants to come and contribute, that will be very welcome too. Yeah, that's it for me. I think I dropped a link somewhere so folks can try it. And also, I'm looking into updating the Jupyter.org try deployment, so it's also using the latest version there too. Yeah, that's it.
I added another point, which is a very brief shout out to someone who, well, not someone, a couple of folks who contributed to Jupyter's resource usage, which is hosted on JupyterServer.org. And view the latest release. It supports reporting of the disk usage, which might be very useful, especially if there are disk quotas. And so that's opt-in, and it's based on PS users. I think 3 people contributed over a couple years to this PR taking shape, or maybe actually 4, 2 eons in the most recent iteration. So that was very nice, slowly moving but community-driven feature addition, and it looks exciting. I hope that we can all try it out. It should be on CondaForge as well.
Thanks, Mike, for the update. Okay, so last call for any on the record agenda items.
I guess quick PSA. Can you hear me? I can't tell if this thing's on.
I can hear you.
Great. Also just noticed your hair is green. That's awesome. Yeah, so pip 24 dot whatever version they just dropped no longer depends on setup tools. So you no longer have setup tools around. So if you were using setup tools or package resources or any of the other stuff that it ships at build time, and guess what? Things like Hatch can also use setup tools. It won't be there. So that is throwing some sticky wickets into CI in places. I saw something pop up on NB-convert for that. I think it can't install Pandoc filters or something like that. And you'll hit that in a bunch of CondaForge places where historically pip was bringing in a recent enough setup tools to build things. So now's a great time to shop around for PEP 517 backends, because you have to specify it now. You won't just have it for free anymore. And I imagine a lot of this is the way we've always done it. Sort of build chains are going to start having a bad day, and users are going to find situations where, you know, the inscrutable pip install logs with many layer tracebacks will not even tell them that they're missing setup tools. It'll be some other problem. So if you're seeing funny stuff with pip install, that's probably what it is right now.
Thanks for that PSA, Nick. Okay, I think that wraps it up. So I'm gonna pause or stop the recording, and we'll move on to the unrecorded portion.